Good friend, Jack Madrid, President of DCOM and Country Manager of Multiply Philippines. I've known Jack for a very long time, over 30 years. So he's not that young. Frederick Levy, Vice President for DCOM and CEO of Cash Pinoy, the DCOM Board of Directors, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I am glad to be here today and be part of this summit. It was March last year when my friend and schoolmate, Jack Madrid, invited me to speak at DCOM's induction ceremonies. That was my first. That is, my first time to deliver a speech in a pub. I guess that indicates how different DCOM is from all the associations. Because DCOM, unlike other associations, one, it's composed of very young people. I guess it's composed of very serious but wild in spirit. So you have your induction in a bar. But that's good. That's what we need for this industry. I'm sure you will agree that there's no better time than now to fully engage in e-commerce in the Philippines. Because of the good economy that we're seeing, we're actually one of the best performing economies in the world right now. The good governance reforms being implemented by government through the leadership of President Aquino have translated into good economics for the country. From being the proverbial sick man, the Philippines has transformed itself into a bright spot in Asia, well placed to lead the region's growth. I echo what others are saying, that a stable and performing economy is the new normal for the Philippines. So the growth that we're experiencing right now is sustainable. It's going to be there for at least another few years and could be much longer than that, depending on the continued reforms that will be undertaken over the next few years. Indeed, we are witnessing the reinvigorated trust, faith, and confidence of the world in the Philippines and in this Aquino administration. This is also the case for e-commerce. E-commerce succeeds with the presence of trust, faith, and confidence, not only between buyers and sellers, but also for all who are part of the ecosystem. When the e-commerce law was passed in June 2000, it was clear then, as it is now, that e-commerce should be private sector led, with government paving the way and providing the enabling environment for the industry to flourish. We stand by the principle of implementing rules that are not too intrusive and restrictive as to retard the industry and stifle its growth. However, on the other side of the coin, we must have implementing rules that reduce or eliminate illegal or fraudulent activities in order to protect consumers. We must balance both and try to create a vibrant but a trusted e-commerce industry. Our framework for e-commerce development is supported by 4 pillars. 1, information security. 2, data privacy. 3, reliable online payment. And 4, consumer complaints handling. All of which are reinforced by our engagements and partnership with the private sector. On information security, we are promoting the use of digital signatures to address concerns over the authenticity, privacy, authority, integrity, and non-repudiation of electronic transactions. The DTI was primarily responsible for the issuance in June 2009 of Executive Order 810 on the institutionalization of the National Certification Scheme for Digital Signatures. The objective is for the government to lead the use of digital signatures with the private sector to follow. We have issued department administrative orders that serve as the EO's implementing rules and guidelines. We are hopeful that the use of digital signatures for e-government services will very soon become a reality. So we're pushing very hard on this so that you can pay by credit card when you deal with government agencies. On data privacy, DTI issued Department Administrative Order 8, or the Data Protection Guidelines, way back in July 2006. We knew then that the guidelines were not enough. It took several years in the making, but we are glad that the Data Privacy Act was finally passed last year. We have also been working on enabling the acceptance of various forms of electronic payment for government services, as I mentioned earlier. Not only for DTI, but for other government agencies as well. We are promoting the use of trust marks for online businesses. A trust mark is akin to a good housekeeping seal to increase the consumer level of confidence when transacting with an e-commerce site. There is no question that public-private partnership is integral to the e-commerce ecosystem. We appreciate your support in the work we do, and we thank you for accommodating our requests for consultations, whether face-to-face or online, blogs included. We share the industry's goal of moving e-commerce forward and taking it to the next level. We therefore encourage the industry to police its own ranks. We urge you to be proactive in resolving consumer complaints, ideally within 48 hours. Within 48 hours upon receiving them, and screen complaints that should go to the government. Many of you have success stories to tell, stories which I hope other entrepreneurs, budding and experienced, will learn and draw inspiration from. I urge you to sustain your vision and live your dreams. We look forward to continuing partnership with DCOM in making the e-commerce environment a secure, trustworthy, and safe place for businesses and consumers. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Are you open to answering some questions?
Yes, I am.
All right, that's wonderful. Any
If it's
questions?
too hard, I'll pass it on to my expert there.
Okay, there you go.
I just take easy questions.
There are no text questions for now. Are there any questions from the crowd for Secretary? Yes, Oliver.
Good morning, Secretary. Oliver Segovia from AVA. We're an e-commerce startup here. One of the major thrusts of the government is to really increase the amount of foreign investment coming here to the country, as we all know. And in the tech scene, as we can see from around the world, there's really a huge resurgence of investments from the private sector, involvement in the government. If you look at Singapore and even places like Chile, which has been offering entrepreneur-friendly visas. And in one of my visits to Silicon Valley, one of the partners of Sequoia Capital, one of the biggest venture capital firms, says that they always see a lot of traffic from the major US social networks coming from the Philippines. But they don't see a lot of new startups and investments coming into the country. So I guess the question is the DTI doing anything in a major way to help attract the attention of all of the big venture capital firms to really invest and get the Philippine startup scene on the map because we are a big market and the macroeconomic fundamentals, as you mentioned, are pretty sound for future growth.
Yes. Actually, we're working closely with different groups, including the group of Dado Banatao, in trying to get venture capital to start coming to the Philippines. I disagree with the statement that there are no investments coming in. There are, but we want it to be much, much higher than what we're experiencing now. There's actually been an increase in the inflow of capital coming into the Philippines, including in your area. As you've seen, there are many new names, multinationals that have been setting up over the last 3 to 5 years in the Philippines. So, and you know that momentum is building. But what we need to do is really get our local entrepreneurs to be more exposed to the way venture capital is raised, because the way it's raised internationally is very different from the understanding of most entrepreneurs here in the Philippines. And that's why we need very experienced people like sila Dado Banatao, sila Paco Sandejas, in terms of raising money abroad, to try to educate many of our entrepreneurs so that they'll know what to do, what steps to take, what doors to enter, so that they don't waste their time doing the wrong things, only to find out later that that's not the way to go. So there are a lot of efforts between the government and these private groups to do this. You have the Brain Game Network of Paco, you have the efforts of Dado but Dado is not limited just to software. He's actually into all kinds of technology and very heavy on the hardware side. So they have these programs with bringing back engineers here. But they also have programs wherein they choose a couple of people every year through their, forget the name of their annual contest, where they choose the best of the proposals and they bring them to Silicon Valley for 6 months. And they house them there, and they're able to present to various venture capitalists there. And so it's this exchange that is really necessary for it to happen. And then once we got the model correct in terms of how to raise money, we know the system that's being used by the venture capitalists abroad, not the venture capitalists here, but the venture capitalists abroad. That's where the big money is. Then I think that will start to, and we just need maybe 5 to 10 successful ones to be demonstrated here in the Philippines. And then we're there. But we've had already some successful ones. Sila Winston Damarillo and so forth. No? So we need some more, maybe another 5 to 10 more, and then we'll be there.
Thank you.
Actually, the e-commerce really popping up since 2 years, and you start to realize when you see people discuss that it starts to be a lot of money now. I mean, we're talking not about talking about billions of pesos. So comparing to mature industry like BPO, of course, it's still small, but it's on the right direction. After all, a company like Rocket arrived here with a lot of money, and as you said, we could do more to attract this type of company. My question is, whatever will be our ability to attract VC from abroad and invest of Philippines, whatever will be the quality of the entrepreneur who will be able to launch product, the talent, the skills, the engineer, and etc. There is still some restraints who will impeach e-commerce to growth. Yesterday we talked about some, but just a few like that. Logistic issue, especially when you go in province. The broadband quality, which is really an issue, the fraud and the bank position in this ecosystem. So I could name a few others. My question is, how DTI could help the e-commerce player and the DCOM? What could be the influence of DTI to help the support to help us to make this side industry, like banking, logistic, or whatever, to move on and help us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the way we view our function or role is to enable the business environment, right? We're an enabler. We're not gonna make the business, your business grow for you by directly intervening in your operations. We don't do that. We provide the environment. Now, many of the things you mentioned are not under my department. They're under the NTC and various other ITC, ITO. I forget the name. They keep changing the name. And I think it's ITO now, Information Technology Office or something. But we, to the extent that we know, based on your feedback, on what needs to be done, then we will coordinate with these various agencies, such as the broadband capacity, etc. Although my experience with our telecoms firm is that we actually have a pretty decent competition, even though we have only two major players, because they kind of don't like each other. It creates a good competitive environment for telecoms because they're really trying to outdo each other, in whether it be in the consumer services or in broadband services. So I think if there is a demand, they will provide. And if they don't provide, then that's when the government will step in to kind of tell them, hey, you better provide this capacity here, or now you're not doing your job. The good news for the industry is there are many developments going on in the Philippines, some of it demographics. Like half of the Philippine population is below 25 years, right? And you know that most of your customers are the young people. And that's gonna continue. In fact, the forecast is that the big kick will come in 3 to 5 years from now, when a lot of the young people born in the last 20 years will start to work and start to spend a lot of money. That's one working for you. The demographics of the Philippines, we have a very young population. We are going to get an economic demographic dividend. Second is this phenomenon in the BPO call center industry, IT BPO. It's growing still in a... We now have over 750,000 employees in this industry, direct. And I think by the end of next year, we will exceed 1 million. That's how fast this industry is growing. And a lot of these employees will be your customers, or are currently your customers, because they're very young, they have money to spend, they're not paid minimum wage, okay? They're paid significantly higher than minimum wage. And in 1 to 2 years, their salaries go up like that. So they have a lot of disposable income. And this is actually what's driving part of your business right now, the growth in this particular industry. And so the good news is that it will continue to grow. We now have at least 2 companies in the Philippines that are employing at least 30,000 people each. In another 2 to 3 years, you'll probably have 5 to 7 of these mega companies in the Philippines. And a lot more below the 30,000 range. So the signs are aligned for you guys. Your businesses are going to grow. Just do things properly. Okay. The biggest fear, okay, because we in government, we don't want to intervene. We want this to grow big, very big. But at the same time, we have to protect the consumer, as I mentioned earlier. So we don't want to intervene until something really goes wrong. We want to do some preventive things, but we'd really like you to do your own thing as much as possible. But if there is something that goes very negative, like massive fraud, and it hits the headlines, then the government will be forced to clamp down So that's why we're saying it would be good if you self-police yourselves to protect your own interests. You don't really want the government clamping down on this industry. And we don't want to do that. But if we are forced to do that, then we have no choice. So we're very pro e-commerce. It's the wave of the future. We need, like in any industry, you'll have 99% good citizens and maybe there may be 0.5% who are not so good. And they destroy the name of the industry. Those are the ones we need to catch right away. So even information relate to us early on of unscrupulous operators would be very good so that we can prevent something negative that's in a big scale from happening before it actually happens. So we need to collaborate in that way so we can see the growth of this fantastic new industry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. What you said is really music to our ears from the members of DCOM. I want to share with the audience something that is an ongoing dialogue between our association and the DTI, which is really collaborating and partnering on a self-regulating but with agreed-on criteria for what we hope will be a seal, what we call maybe a Decom Seal that will be approved by the DTI to really signify that the members of Decom who are compliant with our code of ethics as well as the regulations and processes that we will agree with DTI's approval will provide that symbol of protection to the consumers who will be purchasing from the Philippine online sites that will become members of Decom. So totally agree with your concerns and call-outs.
Okay, thank you. That would be very helpful, in fact. In fact, on one extreme, if something goes wrong, then we could have the seal as the authorization to allow the website to operate. That's an extreme case. Without a seal, the telecoms firms will not even be allowed to turn on your site. We're not going to do that now, but I'm saying that could be one option we do if things go wrong.
On the topic of protecting consumers, one of the most interesting statistics that Undersecretary Maglaya shared with us yesterday, Mr. Secretary, was the number of complaints that have been received by the DTI regarding e-commerce companies.
Yeah.
And we were surprised, but she told us that there were just about 200 complaints last year.
A lot of them are in the prepaid services.
Yeah. So
where you prepay for medical checkup of your dog. And then they...
So what was surprising to us was that 200 is barely one a day, and considering the growth of the industry, which it's about 5 billion pesos excluding travel, I wanted to say that we must be the 99.5% that you alluded to must be doing a fairly good job in terms of providing a good, safe buying environment.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ralph from MetroDeal. Nice to meet you, Secretary, and a very nice speech. My main question for you would be, because we at MetroDeal, we have now a marketing spend of 10 million pesos every month, 250,000 USD a month. And we're very interested in what will be the developments, because for us, we're investing a lot in this market, employing 50 people here at Enterprise Center to, run MetroDeal. And the Consumer Act of the Philippines dates back to 1993, which is basically before the whole internet started here in the Philippines. I wanted to ask you, Secretary, can you give us maybe an outlook of what will be the upcoming updates of the Consumer Act of the Philippines, so that the people present here can have an idea of what will happen in the coming months, in the coming future, in terms of, Consumer Act of the Philippines?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, there is, I know that DTI has prepared a draft bill for a new Consumer Act. I am not privy to the actually specifics of what's inside that bill. But what I can tell you, though, is I think the revisions to Consumer Act probably will not be immediate yet, because in the legislative agenda, there are many more priorities in front of it before we will get to the Consumer Act. So I think that's not going to happen this year, but maybe next year, depending on how many of the legislations we're able to clear in the new Congress towards the end of this year. If we're able to clear those bills with a higher priority, then by next year we may get to the Consumer Act. I think Yusek Zeni Maglaya was here yesterday. She's the expert on that. Unfortunately, I don't have the details of what's contained in the revised draft. Yeah.
Thank you, Secretary.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. Cherry Miguel here, Chiquibo Marketing, COO. As a Filipino-American, I've got dual citizen back here in the Philippines, right? Now, thank you for being proactive, though, with the e-commerce and very aerodynamic guy. Anyway, my question is, what do you think about so many fictitious names, especially the foreign people that uses a dummy name? I mean, what do you think about that? There's a lot of e-commerce boom right now in the Philippines. It's mostly foreigner, though. How do you regulate that? I mean, what's the percentage, or is the foreigner actually, foreigner, which means black, yellow, blue, green, I just wanted to know, what is your idea in regards to the foreigner? Do they have 100% stake as a DTI, whatchamacallit, when they register to DTI?
Okay. First, when you say foreigner, are you talking about foreigners operating in the Philippines?
That is correct.
Okay. Actually, the rules are not clear when it comes to e-commerce, because under the retail trade law, there is a minimum investment requirement for foreigners to engage in retail trade.
How do you police that? I mean, how do you see, how do you know if they actually doing that, the minimum investment, though?
Well, right now, there is no implementation of those rules yet on the e-commerce.
So therefore, right now, all the hundreds of foreigners that doing e-commerce in our country, there's no regulation at all?
They're unregulated right now.
Okay, so do you
because
know when,
the rules have not been set yet for this industry.
Wow.
So we want to try to work, in fact, with DCOM and other organizations to come up. You have to help us, because we have very few people who are knowledgeable about this in DTI. And so we need really the support of the industry in crafting the rules and regulations when it comes to this.
When do you think, sir, you're going to have...
But having said that,
okay.
There are moves, by the way, to relax the rules on the retail trade, not only for e-commerce but also for in general.
That's correct. But as you know right now, sir, that e-commerce doesn't have a BIR. BIR. I know it's not your line, but they don't get taxed right now as we speak, right?
Yeah.
So I think
I wouldn't worry about that. With Kim Henares there, she's gonna be there sooner or later.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for those questions. And sir, thank you very much for your time.